121st day of class. We're going to start here on the Moodle page and scroll on down to day 121 as we are nearing the end of Unit 4. And today I want you to learn about imperialism in the Middle East. And there's three assignments. This interactive map of the Middle East post-imperialism, another map, imperialism in the Middle East, and then an assignment on the Suez Canal. These are the three things I want you to learn today. And if I click on this, you will see old school geography. And I want you to know where in the world countries are located and the significance. So I'm going to do my best here for memory, but I'm going to be systematic about it and go from west to east. So I'm going to start with Africa here, Morocco, and then the big country there is Algeria, and then we have Tunisia, and that would be Libya, and then Egypt, and then the Western Sahara, and then let's see, where are you? Mauritania, then a part of the world that is struggling right now, Mali, Niger, Chad, and Sudan. And again, even though this is northern Africa, here's the Sahara, sub-Sahara, this portion is considered the Middle East. These are people who are Arabic speaking, Islamic, and even though it's on the continent of Africa, we lump this portion of the continent with the Middle East. Now I'm going to move to the Arabian Peninsula. Peninsula's land surrounded by water on all sides but one, just like Michigan. And I'm going to start here in Yemen. Big population in Metro Detroit from people from Yemen. And then we have Oman. And then the United Arab Emirates. That's what UAE stands for. Then these islands, very hard to get to. Okay, and we have Qatar right there. And then a tough one, Bahrain, a little island, see if I can do it. Okay, a larger nation would be Saudi Arabia, and I know we learned about Saudi Arabia, and we learned about Islam, and then we are moving to, that would be Jordan, and then this country, very small but very important, the nation of Israel, and we'll talk soon about the significance of Israel in the world story. Now, Palestine is not technically a sovereign nation, and again, I will explain that story when we get to that. Then we have an island here, that would be Cyprus, and then Turkey, kind of the land bridge that connects Asia to Europe, and south of Turkey would be Syria, who has been struggling mightily lately with their civil war, and real atrocities been happening in Syria. There's Lebanon, and then we're moving to some of the larger countries here, Iraq, and then Iran, and Kuwait. Now, when I was in high school, the people of Kuwait were invaded by Iraq and suffered greatly. There's Kuwait. And then Turkey. Adjacent to Turkey is Armenia. And there's a story related to World War I to why that is what it is. And then Azerbaijan, a new nation, relatively new, part of the breakup of the Soviet Union when I was in high school. And then we have Pakistan, adjacent to India, and then Afghanistan, and Turkmenistan, Uzbekistan. I think I'm batting 1,000 here. I'm a geography teacher. I better get this right. Tajikistan and Kyrgyzstan. There you go. That is the Middle East. So I wanted to do some old school geography using a new school device. And again, just knowing where in the world these nations are located. A lot of them you hear on the news, and hopefully you know where they are. Okay, so that ends that. And then we're going to talk about the imperial history of the Middle East. And in 90 seconds, it's going to break down the story, succinct story. So we're going to start off here in the Middle East a long time ago. And again, the Kingdom of Egypt, one of the first four river valley civilizations in history. Then we see the Hittites, mainly known for their use of metal and formation of metal. And then the Kingdom of Israel, rule of law, 10 Commandments, Old Testament of the Bible. And then the diaspora when they were removed. Then we see the Assyrian Empire, the Babylonian Empire, and we see the Hebrew diaspora, Persia, the rise of mighty Persia. That just was the biggest thing in the world to that point. And then the rise of Hellenistic culture with Alexander the Great, the stopping of Persia, the rise of Western civilization. Then we see the Roman Empire. From Greek roots come the Romans, and then from the Romans, when they fade out, the Byzantines. And then we see this rise of Middle Eastern hegemony from Islamic sources, the Sassanids, the various caliphates that came out, the Islamic caliphates spread like wildfire. And then we see the Seljuks, very dominant in this region, Islamic, and then we see the Crusader kingdoms, and if you recall from earlier history, Christian world, Islamic world butting heads. And then we see the rise of Saladin, the great Middle Eastern leader that solidified Islamic rule. Then the Mongols, holy smokes, and they took over everything. And then once the Mongols fade out, we see the Ottomans, the mighty Ottoman Empire, the largest Islamic empire to the world. Then we see European colonialism, imperialism, and the spread, replacing those former Ottoman lands. And then as we move into modern times, the state of Israel being founded is a real game changer in the Middle East. And there's a very involved story that I need to take a few days coming up to explain, but Israel is an absolute game changer. And then we see the era of independence. Once European imperial nations fade out, then these Middle Eastern nations achieve independence, and that's where we are in relatively modern time. And obviously, there you go, pretty colors to show the story one more time. So again, hopefully you know the traditional geography by now and the story of imperialism in 90 seconds. And then the third assignment, that was the Suez Canal assignment, is right here. And it was a reading, pretty standard reading, but the Suez Canal is vitally important. That and the Panama Canal are huge. I mean, huge isn't the word. They are vital to the world economy. And I'll show you why. Well, I think we know about the Panama Canal by now. But for instance, if I wanted to take a boat ride from London to India, if I had to go without using the Suez Canal, it would be 12,300 miles. Using the Suez Canal, 7,200 miles. And if you can multiply that by, tens of thousands of ships and the gasoline and the payment of sailors, it's absolutely vital to the world economy. So reading this, pretty standard reading, there are some questions. Now, question number one. When did the first canal get constructed between the Red Sea and the Mediterranean Sea? Now, 13th centuries. So for a long, long time, people realized the significance of this. So the first canal was constructed a long time ago. And the second question is, why didn't Napoleon construct his planned canal through the Isthmus of Suez? Well, he definitely wanted to stick it to the British. He wanted to have control of this. And he realized if he did control this canal, he would have an economic leg up on his enemy, the British. But at the time, science isn't what it is today. It wasn't what it is today. And miscalculation. And then he realized, this is not feasible at this point, and he let it go. Perhaps with modern science, he would have been able to do that. Now, when did the Suez Canal officially open? Now, November 17th, 1869. And it took over 10 years. So they officially started construction in April of 1859. It opened officially November of 1869, which is a remarkable feat for this time period in history in the 1800s to take 10 years to make this canal. And so it opened up in 1869. Now, the Suez Crisis of 1956. Now, you can look at the Suez Canal. It is in Egypt, but they lost control because they couldn't pay for it. They couldn't pay their debts to get the canal going, so it fell into British hands, and Egypt was not keen on that. And control of the canal equaled huge amounts of money. And in 1956, Israel invaded. France and Britain were soon behind, and the Egyptians sank 40 ships on their own to make sure people couldn't get through. Absolute chaos, and at this point nobody's making any money. So Israel, Britain, France, Egypt, they were all into the mix, but at this point things weren't going very well, and that was definitely a crisis. And eventually it dissipated once international pressure caused it to go away. And Egypt eventually did get control of the Suez Canal in 1962. They paid off their initial debts and they got control. But for decades, Europeans were profiting off essentially something that was Egyptians. And then number 6, what questions do you have? Now the questions I have personally is how much money is saved by people using the canal versus the old way of going all the way around Africa. How much does it cost to go through? And the science, how do they make it work on a scientific level? If anybody's ever been to Sault Ste. Marie and see the Soo Locks, it's remarkable. This is at a much bigger scale, so I'd be curious about that. So 3 assignments today, and hopefully you know a little bit about the geography of the Middle East, the history of imperialism, and the Suez Canal, and the story of how Imperial European powers were in the Middle East. So, thank you for watching.